All right, let me call to order the work session of the Arbor Borough Council for Thursday, November 3rd. Ms. Bryant, will you call the roll?
Sure. Council President Fred Bush.
Here.
Council Vice President Michelle Panopoulos. Here. Council Member Barbara Fortner. Here. Council Member Rob McGreevy.
Here.
Council Member Cindy Rickards.
Here.
Council Member Bob Weisford.
I'm here.
Council Member Ira Winston.
Here.
Mayor Andrew Deutsch.
Here.
All right. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none. I have no comments for today. Mayor Deutsch, do you have comments for us?
Just a couple. Is there anyone in the room, or is it just us?
Bill Henderson and John Constantine are in the room with us.
Okay, so for those who are watching or those who are in the room, I just want to let folks know that we have an officer in the borough, Dan Dutton, who has decided to take a position with Radnor Police Department. So he will be leaving our services as of November 9th. And I just want to take a moment to thank Daniel Dutton for his services. He's been an outstanding officer. He's really been exemplary, and he served this borough very well. And I know he's enjoyed his time here. He has a little bit more opportunity in the Radnor department, as it's a larger department. But I want to thank him for all he's done for us, because I know he's really served this borough well, and we're going to miss him, and we're very thankful for the service he did give us. The other thing I want to let folks know is there's been a slight uptick in taking of catalytic converters in the borough. So please, keep your eyes out, keep your eyes open for any suspicious activity. If you do see anything weird, please call 911 immediately. If you have an opportunity to park your car in a garage, that might not be a bad idea. But just keep an eye out for suspicious activity at night. If you hear something odd going on outside your window, please take a look and see if you see anything unusual happening. And that is it.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Deutsch. Just to follow up on that. So my wife had occasion to call the Arbor Police Department after her catalytic converter was stolen, and Officer Dutton came and responded very quickly, and was very professional, and she was a lot calmer after interacting with him than when she first called me and explained the situation. So we're also sad to see Officer Dutton go. Was very helpful and very professional when my wife.
Fred, I just want to add one thing. In speaking with the officers this morning, they did let us know that vehicles that are a little higher off the ground and vehicles that are hybrids are more susceptible to having their catalytic converters stolen. Just for the ones that are higher off the ground, it's a little easier access, and the ones that are hybrids are generally perceived as being more valuable. So keep that in mind. There are some things you can talk to your mechanics about installing to make your catalytic converter less stealable. So you may want to do that.
All right. And I do see that we have the consideration of the resignation on the agenda at this point. So we need to make a motion, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to do that?
Sure.
Okay. I move that council consider the resignation of Patrol Officer Daniel Dutton.
Second by Ira. Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to vote on accepting the resignation of Patrol Officer Daniel Dutton. All those in favor of accepting the resignation?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. It's unanimous. Let's move on to public comment. I think we'll begin in Borough. So,
John Constantine, 400 South Armor. First one is to address the solid waste calculation. I see it being adjusted further, but I still believe there's equities in these numbers here. I don't see how apartment units can be charged for 25% of what a residential unit is going to be charged. Secondly, I don't understand how we can get to these assumptions that everybody has equal trash. Yard size does impact brush and leaf collection, doesn't it? Is that not part of the calculation? I believe Republic picks that up as well. So bigger yards with bigger assessments pay their fair share for leaf and brush collection. Even if you're suggesting that everyone produces the same one bag of waste per week or whatever, and for commercial properties to be lower than a residential property is unjust as well. I don't know where these $30,900 is coming from, $40,800, allocated to apartment buildings and allocated to commercial property comes by. It's a little different than the first calculation that you had a couple weeks ago. The other item I'd like to discuss, which is coming up, is the parking policy. To say that someone has a driveway, that they should pay more than someone who doesn't pay a driveway, that's an inequity in and of itself. And overall, your proposal says there's $53,000 worth of charges, and your reason for making people pay for parking is an inequity. It's only about $28 per household. And the parking controller does more than just 2-hour parking streets. The meter streets, probably in the center of town, probably 50% of this time. And then on the other streets, you have parking the corner and stuff, and all other violations that do benefit all residents in the neighborhood. So to say that parking controller is only benefiting those that have vehicles is ridiculous. And plus, I have multiple cars, but I may only park one car out when I allow my kids to use the basketball hoop in my driveway. So I have 4 cars, but I got to make a permit for all 4 of those cars. I'm going to be paying $400 just so my kids can play maybe 5 times a year at basketball when I park one of them out there, because I don't use the street today.
All right.
There's a lot of flaws in this policy that you need to think through before you go ahead and pass it.
Thanks for your comments. Mr. Anderson, do you have comments for us?
I'm just here to answer any questions council might have.
All right. Anybody online?
No one from the public is on Zoom.
Okay, I will close public comment. Let's move on to the presentation and discussion items. 7A is parking regulations.
Oh boy. Everybody's favorite thing. Okay, so I'm going to start the way I did when I made the presentation in May and when I made a presentation in August, and that's to thank the members of the committee, Bob Weisberg and Rob McCreevy, along with Manager Bryant and Michelle Carroll, for working on this since it's a year, and meeting quite often, twice a month. So we've done a lot of work on this, and they've been really willing to dive into the minutia of parking, and it's been great. So the committee had their preliminary recommendations for residential parking that we presented in early May. Council provided feedback to us. We considered those and presented what at the time we thought would be our final recommendations in mid-August. But council asked us to consider a few other things. So we've done that, and now we're coming back with what we think is a proposal that council now needs to decide are around some parameters. What do we want to do so that we can move forward with this? So in the packet, there's a 3-page description of the changes or the program as we're proposing it, and some additional changes, non-residential parking recommendations. There is one mistake in there that I didn't catch in item number 9. It talks about the program being administered using license plate readers, and it says that there won't be any hang tags. And that isn't correct. I should have crossed that out for this version, because we did, in response to council's request, consider hang tags for guest parking, and so we are including that now in our recommendations. So when you're looking at that summary, the items that are underlined in there are the things that have changed since mid-August, and you just need to cross out the last couple sentences of number 9, and that'll be the right version. If council is able to come to a place where they're ready to say, hey, yeah, we're good with this, well, then the committee will work with the solicitor to draft the ordinances and the resolutions that we'll need. And if we are at a place of agreement tonight, our plan is to have an ordinance ready for us to consider to advertise at our December 1st meeting, and then we'd be able to vote on it at the December business meeting, which is the 15th, excuse me, can't add. So that's what our plan is. I'm not going to go through everything like I did before, but I am going to mention a couple of things just to remind everybody once again. The changes that are described in here only apply to streets that already have 2-hour zone parking on them. This does not apply to the entire borough. I know sometimes people have heard that out in the public and thought it did. It does not. We're not making any changes to the existing 2-hour zones. Those are staying, those, whatever has been labeled that way is going to stay labeled that way. The things that council asked us to consider when we presented this the last time, one was to consider the fact that we had recommended that the hours in which the 2-hour restricted parking applies should be changed from what right now is a little bit piecemeal. I mean, a lot of it is 8 to 6 Monday through Friday, but we have some that's 8 to 6 Monday through Saturday. We have some that's 10 to 8 Monday through Friday, but then I think in one place there's a Saturday thrown in there. I forget. It's like really, and it's just, as I said, it's piecemeal, kind of a mishmash. The committee felt, why not do two things? Make it really simple, make it the same for all of them, and also do something that would give more protection to people who are paying to park on the street because they have asked to have the borough put this restriction on the parking on their street. So we were recommending 24/7. The 2-hour limit would apply. Council asked us to think about that again in August, to talk about it again, and we did, and we still think 24/7 is correct. So council as a whole needs to decide, do we want to do 24/7 or do we want to do something different? And in speaking with our parking controller about this, to just see, because we're like, well, what's from his experience, what would maybe make sense? And he felt it maybe would make sense to have it be in line with what we have for our parking meters, which is 8 to 6 Monday through Saturday, if we weren't going to do the 24/7, which he thought made sense. But anyway, so we have that. That's something we can talk about and consider. One other thing I'll point out in here is in this that we've talked about the rollout would definitely be staggered. It's not going to, immediately start January 1st, even though if we'd been able to adopt the ordinance earlier, we would have, but at this point, it'll get staggered a little bit. There is one thing that we weren't asked to consider that the committee decided we wanted to recommend as a change, and that is if a block wants to have the 2-hour designation removed, we had recommended that we would follow what Nelson Nygaard proposed for adding a 2-hour zone, which is 60% of the residents sign petitions saying they want it, and that the parking utilization during peak hours is greater than 60%. And we said, well, that's still fine. If you want to get a 2-hour zone, we think that makes sense. But, if you want to take it away, it shouldn't matter what the utilization is. If 60% of the people on the block say they want the 2-hour zone gone, let's just say, hey, you can take it away. And that was, as a way to simplify that process. So that was the committee's recommendation. Again, something for council to consider. I want to mention, I'm looking through the material from what I had before. I want to speak to something that was raised during public comment about the cost of administration and enforcement. The $53,000 granted, it's a guesstimate, it's an educated guess of how much it costs, but it is just for doing the 2-hour zones. It does not include administering and enforcing the metered parking, fire lanes, snow emergency routes, any of that stuff. This is just to administer the 2-hour zones, administer and enforce them. So that's been teased apart. Let's see what else. We had recommended that cars, that when you're applying for a permit, your car must be registered at the address where the permit is being sought. And council asked us to consider the situation where there might be a valid reason for the car not to be registered at that address. And so we're making the recommendation that in addition to that base requirement would still be there, but that there would be discretion at the borough manager's discretion to say, is there a connection to this property that makes it appropriate to allow that permit to be given. So we think we've addressed that concern. We were also asked to consider hang tags for guest passes, and so we talked about that and said, okay, in addition to the daily or the weekly pass that people could apply for, we're recommending that they could purchase a hang tag. It would cost whatever the base rate is for a residential permit. Once we've set on that, it would cost whatever that is. It would be good for the year. And we suggested allowing 4 per residence for hang tags. And there was one other concern that's not connected to residential parking that the committee was asked to consider, and that was some form of commercial loading permit or pass or something like that. And in talking with our parking controller, it really isn't clear how widespread this is of a problem this is. So our feeling was, instead of, after learning that, I was thinking, well, should we jump into putting something into place when maybe it's not that big of a concern? So we'd like to check in with the NBA, see if they could survey the business association members and see if this is a real problem or is it an isolated kind of incident. So we're not recommending a change for that at the moment. Yes.
If I may, on that last point, I do want to emphasize that there are isolated incidents where that's a problem. Myself and Paul, our parking controller, talked about ways that we felt that for isolated incidents, we could help provide solutions for those business owners. So I don't want you to think that we're just saying, tough break for anyone and everyone on that.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right.
So, love to know if anybody has any questions on what we've proposed, and then I think we need to talk about whatever parts council feels we need to talk about before we can finalize this.
I think my strong inclination would be to try to reach agreement on this, or have this in a form that's ready to move forward tonight. This has been on the agenda a lot. I think that the 3 points that I think council has most had disagreement on are the hours of enforcement, the rates, the rates that would be charged, and the parking passes. So I think those are areas that we need to discuss. If there are other areas that you'd like to discuss as well, this is going to be the time. But I'm hoping that we can, reach a decision on those 3 items. We may have to have votes instead of having a full agreement, so that we can move ahead with this. Okay, so there's also additional parking recommendations that are listed on this sheet. Are you proposing that we move those now, or is that for the future?
No, now. So because while we're doing an ordinance, let's just throw those in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wouldn't imagine any of those are.
Well, I'm looking at the one that allows additional violations to be issued each hour, and I'm wondering what total a car could get just for sitting in a 2-hour zone. Are you going to, can a car rack up $300 worth of fines for being in a
if you leave it there that
2-hour zone for a day? I mean, I'm a little worried about what the limit might be.
Oh, okay.
If I may jump in on that, Fred, in the downtown district, it's a problem when somebody says, oh, there's, I don't feel like moving my car. So, and they get a ticket. They're like, well, no, I've got a ticket. I can just stay here for 24 hours. And they just continue to violate. And there's no incentive to have them remedy the violation.
Yeah, every hour, I don't know. We should probably ask John Walker.
Well,
there's an upper bound, beyond which.
Or maybe we can implement that for the parking meters and see how it goes.
Right.
Well, it is for meters. It's just for meters. No, this is just.
Oh, this is just for meters. Okay. I was just worried about somebody on a residential street.
No, this is just for meters.
$300 fine.
No.
Being like, what is this place?
This is this is just for meters.
Okay. All right.
We are.
Metered.
Okay. For metered spaces. Yes, we are going to be looking at. Is there anything that needs to be done about somebody violating 2-hour zones over and over and over again? But I don't know that. Yeah, that's
my objection is just. I don't know if it was just metered. So let's not worry about that.
This is just for metered because that is a problem. We know that's a problem.
All right, let's start talking about hours of enforcement.
Sure.
Okay, so who would like to make a case for 24/7 enforcement? I think that would be a significant change from what we have now. Anyone like to make that argument?
Wait, Fred, I'm sorry. I have an argument against it. You're only looking for positive at this point.
Hey, does anybody think we should be doing 24/7 enforcement?
Okay.
Because that's a change.
Well,
I think
the 3 committee members do, but
okay. Would someone like to make that? Okay, so someone make that case, because I think the 8 to 6 Monday through Saturday, which was the other proposal, sounds pretty comparable to what we have now. So I think that would be basically status quo. It would be rationalizing the schedules and making them all the same, which I think is a great idea. So 24/7. Who wants to make a case for it?
Well, I'll repeat what I said before. We felt that we wanted to recognize the fact that we are asking people to pay more for this because the people who are getting the benefit of the 2-hour zones should be paying for it, but we felt they should get a little more in return for that. So this gives them a little more guarantee that there's going to be space for them to park relatively close to their home. We can't guarantee they can park right in front of their house because that's never possible, but this was a way to, give them a little more assurance that they're getting something, that they want from that. So that was where we were coming from with that.
Okay.
And Rob or Bob, if you guys remember something else that I'm forgetting, please let me know.
Well, I mean, Fred, if you have a concern about the enforcement costs or something, we had talked with the manager about a way that could be managed.
Yeah.
So that it could be done kind of randomly. It wouldn't be like every hour of every day, but yeah. No,
to say 24/7 enforcement is a little, that's overstating. It's the limit is in effect 24/7, but we're not going to have somebody patrolling 24/7. That's not possible.
I mean, it's a practical matter. I think the only way it's going to get enforced is if someone on the block complains. Mm-hmm. Right, because...
All right, so Cindy?
Not always.
Cindy, did you want to?
I guess, do we have any significant documented community concerns that there are issues that need to be addressed 24/7? Or are you just saying now that we're charging more, we should probably move to 24/7? I just would suggest we keep with 8 to 6, unless we have a preponderance of community concerns, and perhaps revisit this. We do have evidence of concerns.
So I would just respond, Cindy, to that in the following way. Committee spent a lot of hours discussing these issues, discussing the question that Fred's asking now. It's a nuanced question. I think Barbara's done a really good job of summarizing why we made the recommendation we made. The council could start all over again and just say, look, we're going to lift all the 2-hour zones everywhere in all the residential neighborhoods. And then the neighbors, and then the blocks could opt in, block by block, they can opt in. Then when they're opting in, you can say, hey, what do you want? And actually, I've been at the table. Wait a minute, let me finish my thought, please. I've been at the table when blocks were asking for regulations, when blocks were asking to opt into the 2-hour regulations. I've sat there and listened to groups of 20, 30 neighbors say, look, this is uncool. We don't have any place to put our cars. We want to park near our homes. We have minivans or SUVs filled with groceries. When we come home, we have kids. We need to park near our homes so we can get to our homes with our groceries. We need access to our homes. The whole purpose of the 2-hour zones is to give residents reasonable access to parking as close as they possibly can to their homes. We could discuss and argue every single detail of the rules and regulations that the committee has recommended under that 2-hour zone. But if we're going to discuss each one of those, we'll be here all night. And it would be simply easier just to lift all the 2-hour zones and say to the community, basically, here's some a la carte rules you could opt into if you'd like to have parking near your home, or we can do our best to provide that service to the community. And I don't know if it takes 4 council members to make a policy. I don't know if we have, Fred, I feel like you're seeking a general consensus here. I'm not sure if we're going to get it or not, but I don't know that we can keep talking about it. I think we should just have an up down on this.
So, Bob, if I could just respond, Fred, if I can respond, I understand, like, you all keep sharing the same rationale, and I appreciate it. I'm just asking you, is there a preponderance? Has the community come and complained and said we need 24/7 patrol? I mean, that's the question. Do we have community complaints about 24/7 patrol?
We don't really have. We have basically a system where we depend upon law-abiding people to read the sign and say, "Oh, I'm only allowed 2-hour parking here." That's the way most rules work. It's the reason most people don't run stop signs too, because we're all on our honor to follow the rules and regulations.
Okay.
We're just simply talking about a nuance of enforcement that kind of may not make a difference one way or another, actually. We just need to put something in place.
So they're doing it. So to your point, people are doing it, and we don't
Probably.
have... I guess I'm not to say we're going to put 24/7, but not really do it. I wouldn't do that. If we're going to patrol 8 to 6, then let's do that. If there hasn't been a breach in the honor system, then I see no reason to extend that enforcement without community complaints.
What does the 2-hour sign on your block say?
I think we're 8 to 6.
All right, folks.
Yeah.
So I'm actually looking at the parking study. I was thinking, well, so the parking study, the original parking study actually did find that streets were heavily parked at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. So, you know, there are streets that have, you know, parking issues at 7 p.m. weekdays, weeknights.
You may also see 6 a.m. at the train station.
Yeah. So, you know, it is an issue even at times when we're not enforcing it.
I could suggest flipping this.
The committee agrees with you, Fred.
What that?
6
I
a.m.
said the committee agrees with you, Fred.
Okay.
Sorry, you said 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.?
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to get us off track, and I don't know, you know, but I will admit that just kind of, you know, brainstorming with Paul when we were chatting with Barbara at one point, I think I did say something out loud of like, well, I bet with residential parking permits, I bet most people are at work during the day, and I bet most of the enforcement issues are outside of 9 to 5. But that's just personal kind of guess about that. And I'm glad Brad found something else in NIGAR that correlates with that. But for whatever it's worth, starting now that I started talking, I mean, this is not like a hill that, you know, I'll also have to use a weird metaphor. I don't feel strongly either way on this particular issue.
All right. I'd just like to take a vote then here.
May I add one comment?
You may.
I'm not a huge fan of creating laws that we don't intend to enforce. I think it's not a good precedent.
So
we would enforce the law.
Yeah.
If the council made it 24/7, it would be enforced.
Yeah.
Obviously, as was stated, Paul, and if council decides later tonight that we can hire another parking controller, we would not have a parking controller working 24/7. It would be periodically, we would ask the parking controller, hey, could you adjust your shift today and, you know, work like 11 to 8? Or could you come in early one day and work like 5 to 2 or something like that? Like it wouldn't, that's how the enforcement would work, and it would be just random and just frequent enough so that people would have to decide what their risk level is in terms of breaking the law.
Right. Thank you. That's an excellent explanation. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, so 24/7 is what's recommended by the committee. Who's in favor of 24/7 enforcement? All right. So I see everybody in this room has their hand up, and Bob, I know you have your hand up. All right. And Cindy, I know you don't have your hand up. So I know how everyone's voting here. All right. So we're going to go with 24/7 enforcement. Next, let's talk about parking passes. Ira.
So you say hang tag, does that mean they have to go to the borough office to buy the hang tag?
That's not for residential.
You said
That's
parking.
for guests.
Yeah, right. We're talking parking passes.
So-
I mean guest passes.
You want to talk about guest passes next?
I mean
Okay.
guest passes. Ira got it.
Okay, sorry, and I didn't because
No, I just
before
wanted-
that was your third
So
item.
no, someone would not have to come to the borough office necessarily. The way it would work, Michelle Harrell had a great conversation with United Public Safety, who does our enforcement software.
Yeah.
Someone could register for it online through UP Safety, and then it'll be sent to them. Or if they wanted to, they could also stop by the borough office, and we would put the same information into UP Safety for them and on the spot give them a hang tag.
But it couldn't be tied to their license,
No.
like the other stuff?
Well, that was the whole point of the
I
hang
think
tag.
there are two kinds of guest passes we're talking about, and I don't think it was totally spelled out, but I don't take liberties.
Would you like?
But I
Go
think
ahead, Barbara. You can.
Yeah, okay, because I was going to say, I can explain it. So what we had proposed in August was a daily or a weekly guest pass, which would be tied to the license plate.
Okay.
Okay, so, you know, that you would, a resident would apply for that pass on behalf of their guest. Yeah, either online or over the phone. They can call the borough office and do it that way. And as when we asked, talked about this at one of our committee meetings, Michelle Carroll said too, if somebody, the office isn't open and for whatever reason they're not able to do it online, they can leave a message. They can either email or they can call and leave a voicemail and say, hey, I've got this guest and I need a pass for them. So they're not going
to the license plate.
They're not going to get a ticket, right? It's tied to the license plate. Then at the August meeting, we were asked, could we consider hang tags that are not tied to a license plate, that are just something you hang in the car of your guest and says, the parking controller could scan something that's on there that would tell them, yes, this has been paid for, and they're parked in the right neighborhood, because, we're not going to,
And it's for that day? Or that
no, that would be for the whole year. That would be for the whole year.
That's what I missed.
Yeah, it could be used for any car.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well and how much is that?
The base rate, whatever we decide the base rate is for residential parking permits.
That's the proposal on the table.
That's the proposal on the table, yeah, so.
But that could go to any car.
Any guest.
Any guest car, yes, whatever.
Okay, now I understand, no more questions.
Okay.
And that's only available to residents. That's not available to businesses or to
Right.
Now I understand.
renters, apartments.
So you see the idea of this is like, it's somewhat burdensome to get multiple guest passes. It can be expensive, $5, as Cindy pointed out. I mean, you have parents that visit frequently, you have caretakers, it's not, right.
It makes total sense.
But I think that the hang tag should be priced in a way that reflects the value the borough's actually giving people, which is quite a bit of value, because you can take that for an entire year, and it's a very nice option for flexibility, and it even answers the question of somebody who can't get through to the borough office, off hours. If they've purchased it, they've solved the problem for the whole year.
Right.
So I think that I think we might want to price it a little higher. That would be my own input. I think that it would be like at least like 1.5 times the base rate, because it is it's a valuable thing. For a lot of people, they will look at that and say, well, for the number of times I was going to have to buy a daily pass, this is clearly a better deal. And some people may say, how would I do that?
Yeah, right.
I might have 5 guests this year, but people can decide.
Right, and I just want to pay $5 each time.
And just to reiterate, this is only for the regulated blocks.
Right. Yes.
I understand.
So this may be too onerous for some neighbors, and they may, for this reason, choose to exit the program.
Oh, the blocks will decide.
Yeah.
That's true. It might be. Yeah. Fred, you asked kind of a sidebar question of, would this be available to people who live in apartments? And I think the answer is, if they are allowed to get a residential parking permit, then they could get a guest pass.
Right. Anybody.
But that being said, there aren't none of the big apartment buildings are on in 2 hours.
Right. So this would only be for like the Gigunda house that was turned into 3 apartments or something.
6 units.
Yeah, we had some of those. Well, shoot, I lived in one that was built as 2. So
to be clear, the guest permits, whether they are attached to a license plate or they are hang tags, they are only issued for. Are they only issued for a particular neighborhood or zone, whatever you want to call it?
Hey, sorry, 1 second. Hey guys, John, Bill, sorry. You guys are welcome to chat, but if you're gonna have a long conversation.
Are they going to follow that? So if I'm a resident and I apply for a guest permit, it's only good for whatever the zones are called. I'm calling them zones.
Yeah, we call them neighborhoods because
But it's only good for that neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And administratively, that works for the office, having the license plate system and the hang tags.
Yeah, since it's all tied in UP safety, it's fine with us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one of our
I would just suggest that we don't need to give them the option to buy 4 of them, though.
I might just say 1.
I think let's start with 1. See
One guest hang tag.
how they get used, if they get abused, if there's really desire for them at all.
Well,
Just tiptoe it.
Sure. Can I ask, Manager Bryant, do you think that would, if we wanted to, if we put it in as 1 and then in a year said, oh, we want to give people the option to buy 2, is this going to be something that's in the ordinance or something that could be in the resolution with the fees?
I do not know the
Okay.
answer to that, but that'll be a relatively simple ordinance change.
It's just,
council
yes,
over that,
yeah, okay.
If we could set it with the fees, that would be better.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been trying to.
All right.
Okay.
So I'm seeing people have general consensus about the idea of either using these rates and getting your license plate, your guest license plate tied to it, or purchasing a guest pass for the year.
Hang tag.
Guest hang tag.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right. So I'm seeing consensus
I
here.
do. Oh, wait, I don't. I'm sorry. And I just want to reiterate, I understand your thought process. I appreciate the committee. I just disagree. So you don't have to re-explain your position. I do understand it. I just want to continue to say that I think neighbors who live in 2-hour zones around public transportation, around the business districts or those high density apartment areas bear the brunt of resources which benefit us all. And I still hold charging them for guests to solve a problem that we don't have evidence of existing just seems unjust. So I just ask, could we continue the 2-hour zone folks register their guests as we do right now, and we revisit if there is evidence of abuse that we charge? I mean, we are really hitting folks with a lot of new charges and rules and patrol without solid evidence of complaints. And this is one that I really think is unjust.
You do have to register guests now, right? But there's no charge.
Yes.
Correct, but there's no charge, and it's onerous. I mean, it's not nothing. And if there is one neighbor that to save the $50 permit every single day wants to register their car, okay, they're probably the outlier.
Register as a guest.
Saying if we didn't have a fee for guests, if we do not have a fee, and somebody decides they're just going to be a guest all the time. I think we'd realize.
I mean, I think the the question is whether or not we're going to mind if people who live in apartments register themselves as a guests on the 2-hour blocks, so that they have some place to park on occasion, however frequently they wish to do that. That's the loophole that we're covering by providing the hang tags. We could provide a limited number of hang tags free of charge. I see the face, but it's actually something that I know occurs. I know people who live in apartment buildings who register themselves as guests in 2-hour zones when they don't live on 2-hour zones because it's possible to do it. It's possible to game the system that way. And that's basically what we would be leaving the door open to.
But you have to put your address.
It may happen. It may happen infrequently.
Yeah, I would say for the community backlash of saying you're charging me without evidence that it's being abused. Now, I do that because I register guests now, and you have to put in your address. So I don't understand how.
I'm not sure, Bob. I'm not sure that can happen unless you've got a resident who's willing to register you as their guest.
Correct, Barbara.
So I'm not.
So why don't we do both? Why don't we have the option of the residents purchasing a hang tag for the convenience of their guests, and also continue with the free registration, and you do one or the other. But that way, it gives a resident an option of having a guest tag for the convenience of their guests, so their guest doesn't have to go online or something like that.
Great. Yeah.
Why not do both?
I think that removing the cost, so you can buy a hang tag, so you don't have to get on and register and pay $5 each time, or you can continue. The barrier being the hurdle of registering your guest.
Yeah, that's what I'm proposing.
Yeah, I think that's a fine compromise.
So Bob, I'm not sure. What are you proposing, that there's money involved somewhere? I'm not totally sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No. I say you give a resident the option of purchasing a hang tag guest pass for the convenience of guests that they want to provide the hang tag guest pass to, and you give guests the option of registering online for a 2-hour pass. The data after a year, the data will tell the story. to the council members in the future, the staff in the future who are reviewing the use patterns, and they'll see if there's anybody gaming it. They'll understand more about what the rules should probably be. And if they're not, they're not. If it's not, as Cindy says, if it's not a problem, it's not a problem.
Is your proposal that that we roll this out so that the online registration for the licensed tied guest pass is free, or is $5?
No, that the guest tag, hang tag, be the same cost as a permit, and that the guest pass also be made available for free to someone on a night by night, on a day by day basis.
I would make that any time.
Yeah. So, Bob, can I just correct one thing that I think you said there? You said the guests would register themselves, and I still come back to no. What the committee said is that the resident needs to register their guest. And that's fine. Currently, the system is that the guest registers themselves. Is it? I don't think so.
No, I register my guests.
I happen to know someone who does that.
Well, so there's someone gaming the system.
Exactly.
Tell the office who that is. You're certainly welcome to.
All right.
I've already mentioned it to you.
Interest of possibly being too complicated.
Yes.
Can we set this up so that, since it's by license plate, we set it up so that the first time the license plate goes in, the guest pass is free, and then after that it's $5. So you get one, trip. Is that better in any way, or is that just more complicated?
Sorry, I missed what you said.
All right, so the deal is, right, so we're proposing that, you sign your guest up, buy the license plate, and it's $5. So the office says, oh, we haven't, when you type it in, oh, we haven't seen this person as a guest before, it's free. Whereas if they keep doing it, then it's $5. Like the first time you have a particular person as a guest, it's free. From then on, it's $5. Is that too complicated to administer?
Unfortunately, I'm not involved in the system enough on a day-to-day basis to give you an answer. I don't want to say yes and Michelle and Missy stab me tomorrow for it.
Yeah, right. That's probably too complicated. Yeah. I'm gonna withdraw.
That seriously. And think of this from a neighbor. Wait, were you free once? Let me pull out my Rolodex to see. I think that is so overcomplicating it for neighbors.
All right.
So I will just add one thing about why the committee felt that it was important to charge for guest passes. We really felt that it's important to prioritize parking for the residents of the 2-hour zones. They are the ones who said, we're having trouble parking near our homes. Council, please give us regulations. And so our feeling was, if we are going to ask residents to pay to park on the street, which I think we have to because it costs money for the borough to administer and enforce that program, it didn't seem fair to residents who in any given moment don't have a guest to know that they have a fellow resident on their block having a ton of guests that aren't paying anything to park on the street, and this resident may not be able to park anywhere because they're just. So our feeling was this should be a shared cost across all of this, all of the folks, residents and guests who are wanting to park in these regulated spaces. Again, that's a council decision, not, the committee doesn't get to just decide that, but that is why we felt so strongly that there should be a fee for the guest passes.
All right, so Cindy, I'd just like you to respond or just kind of sum up, and then we're going to do another up and down vote just to move along here.
So I think, again, without the office or council members coming to me saying right now, residents are complaining about guests or guest pass abuse, I would simply hold that we don't need to charge, that we can wait and see with the current system. I think Bob's hybrid approach of offering a paid guest pass hanger and then continuing to keep registration of guests at no cost until there's a demonstrated issue seems reasonable to me.
All right, so I'm going to suggest that the two options that are on the table are, what the committee has suggested originally, which is, well, modified slightly. So one guest pass door hanger available at a flat fee, or license plate based guest passes with the fee schedule that's in the document. Or the other alternative that we'll see is Bob's proposal, which Cindy is also supporting. So,
but I'm in support, Fred. I just want to say on the top here is that I'm in support of the committee's recommendation. I thought you were looking for conversation of compromise, so I was offering one that I could live with. But I'm basically, I just want to say I support the committee's recommendation. And that's what I'll be voting for.
Okay. So people who prefer the committee's recommendation, please raise your hand if you prefer the committee's recommendation versus the versus the alternative, which is basically not charging for the
daily or weekly.
Yeah, not charging for the daily or weekly.
The hang tag stays the same.
The hang tag stays the same. Yeah, all right.
Except only one.
But one hang tag, and we haven't.
So we're settled on the hang tag. So we can leave that out of the discussion. So we're basically just talking about the daily or weekly passes.
Right.
Are we going to be charging for it? All right, people who prefer to be charging for the daily and weekly passes.
Well, I'm going to follow the committee's recommendation because I don't have reason not to. So that's
a yes.
I guess that's the way you characterize it. I prefer to be charging, sure.
Okay, well,
if you must.
Can we see a show of hands here, people in favor of charging the committee's recommendation? All right, I see 4 people in favor, 5 people in favor. All right, so we will go ahead with the committee's recommendation. All right, last item is the costs for the.
Can we? Yeah.
What are we?
I think the process to take his own way is something that we should discuss.
The process to take his own way. Does anyone object?
Wait, can I? One thing with the guest pass. Can we talk about the price for the hang tag? Because the committee had recommended base rate.
Let's talk about that with the other.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, fine. I just don't want us to forget that. And we, I think we've settled on we're limiting hang tags to 1. But I want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay.
That was the consensus. All right, so we'll need to come back to the price of hang tag. Let's talk about removing yourself from the zone. Michelle, you want to?
Yeah, I wanted, because that is a new thing, and I think that it doesn't absolutely make sense in the process by which the neighbors can remove themselves from a 2-hour zone. And there may be people who are living in 2-hour zones that don't have parking problems because like 20 years ago, there was a problem. There was just one particularly vocal neighbor who petitioned council successfully, and maybe that nobody who lives there wants to live in a 2-hour zone. So I definitely favor that. I want to make sure we've thought through that the process, which would just be 60% of people signing a petition with no utilization review, isn't subject to the fact that it can be easy to get people to sign a petition if you're like, here, you won't have to pay for that stupid parking permit if you sign this. Whereas, maybe there should be some sense of utilization review as well.
Just if they regret it, they'll just.
We don't want to be going back and forth taking signs on it. And that's a burden on the borough.
Right, and we checked this with the solicitor, and his feeling was that you need to make these changes by ordinance, not by resolution. So the 2-hour zones need to be added or removed.
I would be more comfortable if there was a utilization review in conjunction with that, so that if it turned out that maybe we barely had 60% people sign, but it looked like this block was really parked in all the time, we consider whether this really.
I would say that we'll pause enforcement on anybody who even if we're doing a review or something, if people tell us they don't want it, we should pause enforcement.
Yeah, I like that.
And not force them to buy. I think what we should do is when we're rolling this out, we'll be notifying all the zones. And if any neighborhood tells us that they want to stop, then we don't charge them for we don't ask them to buy their passes. And then we do the study. I mean, if they talk to us immediately, then they don't have to buy the passes.
Yeah.
And we pause enforcement until it's determined on what our decision is going to be. But I would almost.
I think. May I make a comment? I think Michelle's point's really good. Is that whether or not just 60% is the right threshold, and I think your idea of pausing enforcement is also good, Fred. I wonder if we would just add, like, if 60% of the people, like, either do a sort of a census of the utilization, right, or pause and cover up the signs, take away all the enforcement for some period of time, and then ask the neighbors once again to sign the petition again. So they would need to make the request after, they'd need to make the request after, say, 6 months of not having the 2-hour zone anymore, and see if 60% still want either that or some utilization criteria. But I think just to pause it as a kind of a ceremonially, I think you have to pause it with some criteria by which you then make a decision after.
We pause it and we ask them again in 3 minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. We should check with John Walco about that. But.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay. All right. So
I have one question.
Wait, well, and I was like, have we decided something on that?
I've had it from the beginning, and I've never.
All right. Well, let's finish up this topic. Is everyone comfortable with the idea? So the idea would be that 60% of the neighborhood says we want to opt out. We pause. We put everything on hold, and then we confirm it with them again in a few months.
I'm okay with that, just on the caveat that between now and the meeting where council would actually consider advertising an ordinance, that I get an opportunity to talk with Michelle, Missy, and John Walco about it.
Mm-hmm. About this idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How do we do it?
Yeah, but whether we can do it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise we can just make it the.
I'm certainly on a policy level very open to the idea and supportive. I just want to make sure that it works.
See whether it makes sense.
So Fred, I'm sorry, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying we're covering all the 2-hour zone signs, seeing what takes place for 3 months, and then sending out a survey to neighbors to say, was this a problem? Do you still want the 2-hour zone? Because you'd have to cover the signs to let parkers know that there's not an enforced 2-hour zone. Correct?
Yeah, Samantha.
So Cindy, I should make sure we're on the same page. I want to make sure I understood what you said and you understood what we said. For this, I believe we're just talking about a single block at a time, not a whole neighborhood or the whole borough. Is that what you were referring to as well?
Yeah, you know what? It just was hard to hear because some of you were talking over one another. So yes, it's more of a clarifying question. So you're saying, I'll use my street. You're going to cover the 2-hour zone parking, not enforced. You're going to do a social experiment. 3 months later, come back and say, hey, do you still want to keep it as 2-hour or not 2-hour? And we're going to do that block by block.
If people tell us they don't want to. So, right, this is the opt-out. You have 60% of a block can come in and tell us we don't want this 2-hour zone anymore. So we're saying, okay, if the block comes to us and says that, then we will,
okay.
Pass an ordinance to do it. We'll say, okay, we'll check again. We're going to pause enforcement, and we're going to check again in a few months and see if that is still your desire.
I was going to say, you say you need to give us another, if you really want this gone, give us another petition asking for it in 3 months, 4 months, whatever we decide that is. And if you don't give us a petition by that point, we're going to uncover the signs and it's going to be enforced still. I think that's how you do that. I don't think you need to go back to them and survey. I think you make them come back and say, yeah, we really do. We meant it. We like it being gone. It's not causing us a problem. So
yeah, I agree with Barbara on that. That's kind of what I was pointing to in my earlier comment.
So yeah.
All right. I think we have a path forward to figure out if that's a reasonable option. I think our solicitor will have to look at that and see if it makes sense to him. All right. Did you have another point?
Question I've had from the beginning.
It's okay.
So I don't live in a 2-hour zone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to buy a permit to park on the street. Can I buy a permit for neighborhood south or whatever the neighborhood's called? Can I buy one even though I don't live in a 2-hour zone?
I think the answer is no, because you don't live in a 2-hour zone.
Because you'd be like getting the benefits of about about your, I would agree with Barbara. I mean, again, council can decide whatever they want, but
yeah, the way things are written right now, you can only get a permit if you live on a regulated street.
We could sell gold passes for $30,000. You could have a lifetime parking pass to the Borough of Narberth.
Maybe they'll be like NFTs.
Yeah, there we go.
All right.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Bob.
Make a little money for the borough.
All right. So I think we're clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that's not disclosure. Yeah.
The costs, including costs for the hang tag.
Okay. So, well, I wonder if first, should we talk about the structure that we were proposing, which was that we would have escalating fees for, so first, second, third, fourth permit. And I apologize, I had a slide that I meant to send to Manager Bryant early enough today and I forgot, so I don't have something easy for everybody to look at, but it is sort of what's in the packet. It's just not as straightforward, but perhaps. But what we were proposing is a structure that if you have a driveway, your first permit would be the cost, whatever the base rate is. The second permit would also be the base rate cost. The third permit would be 2 times the base rate, and the fourth permit would be 4 times the base rate. And then we suggested that if you didn't have a driveway, the first permit would cost 1/2 of the base rate, but then the rest of the schedule would be the same as the folks with the driveway. So the second permit would be the base rate, the third would be 2 times the base rate, and the fourth would be 4 times the base rate. So I think if we could decide first on the structure, then we can decide what the base rate dollar amount is, and then we're set. So
does anybody have concerns with the general structure that Barbara's proposing?
the committee is proposing.
The committee has proposed, it's true. I keep looking at Barbara because she's speaking, but this is all coming from all 3 members of the committee.
Yeah.
Does anybody who's not on the committee have concerns with the escalating costs? I think it makes sense. I think, it's pretty clear that if you have 4 cars on the road, that's more than your share. And prices should reflect that.
I know Cindy had some concerns, but I wonder if she's going to step away.
No, I'm here. I would have, I wasn't going to, I used all my concerns for those guest pass, which I think is going to be the biggest community issue that neighbors are going to be up in arms about. But yeah, I mean, I questioned why there wasn't a different parallel path for without driveways. So, keep with, the base rate of 50, 100, 200, then maybe, 25, 50, 75, or whatever that parallel driveway is. But I wasn't going to die on this hill because I felt so strongly about charging for the guest passes.
I'm glad I'm not the only person who uses that phrase.
Yeah.
Maybe I use it more now, though, because I'm working with you, Samantha.
Right, so I'm not hearing concerns about the general escalating structure of the costs. Let's talk about the actual amount that is proposed.
So the committee was proposing a base rate of $50.
That's the only
per year.
Really talk about. We've all agreed that the proportion of the escalation and increase makes sense in the top base for not having a driveway. It's really only one number we're talking about.
Well, I'm going to be a little contrarian. I'm going to say I think that the first car should be cheaper. I think that
structure.
Yeah. Well, I think that all of the rest of the numbers are fine. I think if you have 1 car, that's entirely reasonable. You park your 1 car, and the cost should be lower. The $50 rate is quite high. It's compared to other municipalities, it's a lot higher than what they charge for 1 vehicle. It's higher than what Philadelphia charges for 1 vehicle. So my proposal would be to drop that first car rate to something like $10 and $25. $10 for no driveway, or even $5 no driveway and $25 driveway. just to,
In fairness, Philadelphia would really, you'd have to compare a $25 rate because like nobody has driveways there very much.
Yeah.
35.
I don't think they have, I don't think they have a special rate for,
No, they don't. But it is, right, I mean, I think you make a good point that it is relatively, it's not on the low end.
Yeah, no. It's a high charge, and I think for one vehicle, which is, pretty normal in America. I mean, we don't, a charge ought to be relatively low, even if it's lower than what we might think is optimal. Because the larger issue is the people who have 3 or 4 cars out there day after day. But I think everyone in the community is going to agree that that is a significant issue, or at least an overwhelming majority of the community would agree.
So, Fred, could you say again what you were suggesting?
I'll suggest that we keep the structure the same, we keep the numbers the same for the second, third, and fourth car, the absolute numbers that you've got there. But the first car is $10 for a no driveway and $25 for a driveway. All the other numbers stay the same.
So the second permit with a driveway would also be $25?
No, I'm saying it'd be 50.
Oh, okay.
So keep all the other numbers absolute the way they are. We change the relative structure slightly.
To do this, we would just remove the base rate concept.
I think you're right. I know, but we had thought.
I know you thought about it in base rate. I'm just thinking of that first car.
Gotcha.
I think the price is on.
Now I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be.
And I welcome other comment on that. If people want to.
So in that scenario, you could, for the hang tag, you could just make that a multiple of the first permit cost.
Or we could just make that 50.
Or just to.
Yeah, I think 50 is a good number for the guest tag.
Yeah, which is, I mean, we were suggesting it'd be the base rate.
Right. You were suggesting 50. I don't have any objection to $50 for the guest.
Yeah, but it's a practical matter. They're not going to buy the fourth tag. They're going to buy a hang tag, or at least a one hang tag.
Right. That's true. You're right. Yep. I mean, that is
hang tag should. It has to be a little.
Yep.
That's what
that was one of our concerns.
It's a value, and it is susceptible to abuse. So I don't think that many people will do it, but I would put it more in the range of definitely higher than 50, because then you want to buy a second permit. 75 makes sense to me.
Or you just don't charge for guests and make people register online.
Are you trying to disguise your
Just saying. Was I?
All right. I think Cindy, we've decided that we're going to charge for the hang tag.
Hey, I had to try.
All right.
Okay.
Does anyone want to? So we in the room. It seems like.
I think I would be okay with that philosophically. Bob, I'd be curious to hear what you think, but my thought is that, that kind of structure provides some, maybe not an incentive, but it discourages people from having a second, third, fourth car. If you can make your household work with one car, there's kind of
one car on the street.
Yeah,
right.
There's an incentive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Seriously? $50 a year?
It's like 6 gallons of gas or something.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, I don't know how much it's going to incent people to. What I suspect is
to insure a second car.
Yeah, that's
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, it's in line.
Once you get into 3 figures, it's meaningful. It's not. People don't drop $100 just anytime.
Well, and especially if it's a car that you're not using on a regular basis at all, and that's where I think we might see some change in behavior.
So Rob asked if you had any thoughts here. I know you've argued strongly for incentive.
No, I've already climbed my hills, but I just look. I just think whatever fee the council decides is fair. I think is a good. I think it's important to have a fee, but it's costly to. I mean, there's a cost to the public when anybody parks their car in our right of ways. That's valuable open space for all of us that all of us can enjoy. And I know in some blocks, the kids and adults use the street. I know during the pandemic, it was incredible to see how people went out and used the roadways, the open space of the roadways, because cars weren't using them so much. And so I think it's really important just to acknowledge as a civil society that the space of the road is not just for driving your car. It's a space that we all use and share, and it has value. And yeah, I mean, there are like much cheaper places to live than Narberth, where you could park 4 cars on your own property or 5 cars on your own property. There's also a lot of unregulated parking in Narberth, thousands of unregulated parking spaces in Narberth to park in. So again, it's sort of optional as to whether you want the convenience of a parking pass to park near your home. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it.
Nonetheless, I'm going to see if there's support for the $10 and $25 that I proposed and the $75 parking, because that's what I'm seeing. Right.
Can I just say it all the way through just to make sure that I've got it?
Go ahead.
So, all right. So with a driveway, your first permit would be $25, the second $50, the third $100, and the fourth $200. If you don't have a driveway, the first permit would be $10, the second would be $50, the third would be $100, and the fourth would be $200, and the hang tag would be $75.
That's what I'm proposing. Okay, so just a show of hands, people who are in favor of that pricing. Okay. All right, I see 6. So let's move forward with.
We have 7.
Okay, 7. All right. Cindy, thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
sorry.
All right. I'm just surprised. It's okay. Do we have what we need to move forward?
I think we do. Do you? Yeah. Okay.
All right. So, all right.
Get John busy. Drafting.
Right. So let's move on to the.
Can I just say thank you to everyone? I really appreciate the conversation and the discussion and helping us get to completion.
Thank you to the committee for the work that you've done with us.
And Fred,
nobody wants to really deal with it.
I don't know if anyone in the room is acknowledging Barbara, but she led the committee with incredible skill and precision, and through many iterations. And I don't know, you're a real pro, Barbara.
Yeah, I mean, this is the end of like a 5-year process, I think, where so residents came to the borough to ask for a parking study. A parking study was done, and then we had a parking study task force, and then we had a committee to follow up on the recommendations of the parking study task force. So this is the result of years of council attention and
public input.
Public input, that's right. Public input along every step of the process.
And I'm sorry, while we're going to Walco, though, can we also ask him, Barbara, you and I addressed this. You know, we have a business at the end of Iona and Montgomery that uniquely uses our public space in their business model. Barbara has addressed this as an issue. Chief Gallagher addressed this as an issue. Paul has addressed this as an issue. It's a pretty tricky one. While we're going to Solicitor Walco, can we also put this back on his radar to see what we can do to regulate really unique circumstances?
Well, we've already addressed part of that. If businesses like that have been given residential permits in the past, because there was a provision, or there is a provision in our code right now that allows them to get a certain number of residential permits.
They're not
going to allow that anymore. That's going to go away.
They're not. They're not getting.
They don't.
They're not yet.
No, they don't. They just absorb the price of the ticket into their business model.
Yeah, but we're also going to check and see if there's anything else that we can be doing. So we've asked Paul to let us know if he has any thoughts. So
it would be so great if we could do the you get a new ticket every hour enforcement.
Well, that's, yeah, because
it's not metered.
It's
any
right. Well, that's what we need to talk to John about.
So we will,
Yeah.
I think we all agree
It's
that
already
the
on
business
our
should not be
radar.
allowed to.
Yeah.
It's a cost of doing business.
Right. It's, right. It's, yeah.
Exactly.
It's already on
So
our
yes,
radar. Yes.
the answer is yes.
Yeah.
We all hate that idea, what they're doing.
Right.
If I may, all they do is take the tickets and pass it on to their customers.
I know. So that's why we're looking in to see what else might we be able to do.
They're not the only business that does that in Borough.
Yeah. Sure.
All right, well, we can, it's another topic. I think they're, so Cindy, yes, the answer is yes, we'll continue to look into that. All right. So, much more lower stakes item 2023 budget.
Right.
Just waiting for Ira to return.
I'll get mine.
Can load it up.
This presentation is much shorter than the one I gave at the last council meeting. Let me share my screen for the folks on Zoom and future recording watchers. I'm waiting on Ira, right?
Yeah, I think we'll just give him a minute.
And Bill, thank you again for joining us here tonight.
You're welcome.
And sitting through parking
Yeah.
conversation. Really appreciate it.
Bill, did council talk about parking while you were on council?
Yes. Over and over again.
Except for many of these discussions.
I'm sure.
All right, so the purpose of the presentation tonight is to really hone in on some of the specific topics that came up at last month's presentation on the budget. Also, our data is a lot better now that we're a month, closer to the end of the year. I'm going to kind of skim over some of these specific numbers and slides. General fund is on track to outperform the budget. And people want to go back and read the slides, they're certainly capable of doing that. So again, a reminder, the baseline budget is the one that if we didn't approve anyone's request, this is just what would happen to the budget if we just kind of let things running as is for next year. So if we did that, revenues would exceed expenses by about $50,000. That would put the end of year fund balance for the general fund close to $1.4 million. As we talked about before, my recommended minimum fund balance based on GFOA methodology is around $1 million for the general fund. If council approved all of the various requests and ideas for the budget, expenses would exceed revenues from those requests by over $300,000, which would drop the general fund down to just a little bit above that $1 million threshold. However, to council's credit, at last month's meeting, they did point out that even if that is the case, we would be creating a structural deficit, and so next year, the year after, we would potentially be dropping below that minimum threshold, so we don't want to set that precedent now. So what I did, which will be detailed in the next slide, or an upcoming slide, is sorted out which one of these requests are causing a structural deficit and which ones are not, and how we can either cut requests and or generate new recurring revenue to offset those requests. So this is the list of requests again. I'm happy at the end of the presentation if anyone has any specific questions about them, but they're the same as the ones we went through last month pretty much. So, let me actually zoom in a little bit on this slide. Oh, there we go. All right, so to try to put all the numbers on one sheet here, like I said already, the baseline budget has a recurring surplus of about $50,000. The recurring request all together would have a net budget impact of negative $225,000. So that means if we approved all those, we'd be creating a structural deficit of close to $175,000 a year, which we obviously do not want to do. As I noted in last month's presentation, future construction that's already in progress was not factored into the 2023 budget. I was probably a little over-conservative in that regard. So I put together some calculations here for 100 Forest, 203 Haverford, 650 Montgomery, and 714 Montgomery, which have all, have had plans submitted to the borough and are reasonably expected to be constructed in the next, couple of years here for the revenue that they would provide, which would total new revenue of about $129,000 per year. So you take that number, add it to this negative number here, you're left then with a structural deficit of around $45,000 per year. So to potentially, eliminate that, I then went to the request and cut back some of the request. My apologies to the fire company. One of the things I had to look at cutting from their $75,000 request was cutting it down to some specific things that I had a chance to talk to Bill about for the fire company for equipment they need to have for next year. Sorry, I thought I heard something in the background there. Also for the admin office, I had talked about getting QuickBooks online, but that's the way QuickBooks is set up. It's not always ideal for municipal government. And before committing us to that path, I'd like to consider some other alternatives. We'll survive another year of however long with our current software. There was a proposal to eliminate permit fees for projects that qualify for various green building bonuses. And given that we don't know what those bonuses are going to be yet, I thought it might be a little bit premature to commit to waiving any fees in regard to them. And then also for both the proposed parking controller and public works employee, if I limit both of them to 35 hours per week instead of 40 hours per week, that also generates some savings for the budget. So if you do all that, you eliminate that remaining structural deficit, and I forget the exact number. It's not a huge number. You have like a 4-digit number of wiggle room per se that will be generated afterwards. For the sewer fund, nothing really new to report there, just updated some of the numbers in regards to that. It has a very, very healthy fund balance. Again, I didn't really have any worries about the proposals for it. Solid waste, I do definitely want to spend a minute on in an attempt to answer some of the concerns that Mr. Constantine raised. So the first slide here is pretty much the same as the last presentation. As council requested last month, instead of folding in all non-residential properties, so instead of folding commercial and apartment buildings together into one billing category, I split out the apartments. And so as this slide kind of explains, unfortunately, I would love to be able to bill in a more equitable fashion. I think that's a fantastic idea, and it's something that Lower Merion Township does. They charge people based on the size of your toter and your, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, for next year anyway, and again, the thing I want to emphasize too, this is kind of a stopgap to to get us through next year, and then when we have the new trash contract, I think that'll open up maybe some other opportunities to maybe do more equitable billing with the trash, because I do think that is a very good idea. Right now, though, the borough is limited in our billing capacity because we're billing through the property tax bills right now. We're limited to that structure to do our billing. And so the county, the only way we have to differentiate properties is by type of property. And with our contract currently with Republic, we're charged we're charged, doesn't matter how much trash someone's generating, the borough is charged the same amount. And so again, those are things that I think they're very valid concerns about. They're just the constraints I'm stuck with for next year. So what I'm proposing here, and the last thing I know is in terms of calculating the cost from Republic, the borough only gets 2 separate bills. We get one bill for all the apartments and all the residential properties, and we get one bill for all the trash service that relates to commercial properties. So the way these numbers were calculated, I'll start with the commercial one first because it's pretty simple. I took the amount in fees we're charged each year from Republic and divided it by the number of properties labeled commercial per what we have through the county property tax records. For the apartments, how this number was calculated, I talked to Republic about how they do service for apartment buildings in the borough. Some have dumpster service and some have actual toters for, just have multiple toters for the property. In either case, it is more efficient for them to do apartment properties because all the toters are already in one place. That's part of the reason why this fee is lower than for residential properties. The other reason that it is lower is I looked at, and trying to calculate all these fees, I looked at historically through the property tax bill what residential properties, apartment properties, and commercial properties have paid. And I wanted to try and keep those fees as reasonably close as possible to what people have been paying before. Obviously, for some people it's going to be more, and some people it's going to be less. But just looking at, on averages, try to keep it as consistent as possible. And that $100 number is around what the various apartment buildings are paying right now in their property tax bill for trash service. So once I calculate this number, I took it off of the total residential bill that we get, and I took these remaining fees and divided it by, again, the number of residential properties we have per the county. I want to note this living unit concept as well. So I think for an apartment, it's pretty straightforward. Each apartment is a living unit, and there are 11 properties in the borough classified as apartment per the county. Some of our residential properties, as we noticed back during when we were talking about parking, have been, split up into, a handful of apartments. Hence why there's more living units than there are total number of residential properties in the borough. Once I finish these next couple of slides, if council has any questions about where these numbers or more detail about these numbers, I'm certainly happy to get into that more. So again, these are the same sort of requests as before for solid waste. Nothing really changed at the capital fund. I did add some additional information about the actual fund balances for the various components of the capital fund, just in case anyone was curious about that. And it was actually particularly helpful to do when looking at the budget request for the capital fund. Because actually, even with the EIT, the capital fund unrestricted balance would be negative next year if all the requests were approved. So there are two options council could do. I mean, you could use some of the excess fund balance from the general fund, since these are non-recurring projects, to cover it, or you could cut something from this list. In particular, I have a concern about the request. It says Parks and Rec, but it kind of came through NAA to Parks and Rec for repair to the baseball netting. I'm not sure if that number already includes an expected contribution from NAA or not, but I certainly, I think I would want to consider that separate from the budget as a whole and get more information on that request, and again, kind of consider it on its own merits as opposed to lumping it in with the budget as a whole. Nothing really changed with Highway A, just some of the numbers got updated. For the Green Fund, I did make one change. Given that the Borough Council approved looking into community choice aggregation. I did, and I apologize, I did not tell the EAC this, and I meant to. There was a line item in the budget for the Green Fund to make a payment to people for switching to renewable energy. And I'll admit I was hesitant to start that program and commit the money to it if we're going to be doing the CCA. If we don't end up, for some reason, if the CCA doesn't work out, I have no objection to us, considering that. And if council wants to allocate funding for something like that, I totally understand. It just was a thought with the CCA. And again, my apologies to our PHS chair for not talking that through with the EAC before making that change to the presentation. And the police pension fund, again, it's in here. We've done the things we can do to really have control over that. Again, it's more of an FYI. So the goal for tonight is kind of to come some sort of consensus on these budget requests, so I can actually finalize a budget document for a public presentation at the November business meeting. Council's required legally by the end of the year to pass the budget, so to meet that deadline without any special meetings, council would need to advertise the budget at its November 17th meeting, as well as the ordinances we discussed last month for LST, EIT, and homestead exemption. And then at the December 15th council meeting, council would then, council already approved advertisement of all those. Council would approve those ordinances on the 17th. And then on the meeting on the 15th, council would then actually approve the budget. There would be a resolution relating to property taxes, since we're not proposing to change the millage rate, and changing the 2023 fee schedule based upon these budget requests if council moves forward with any of them.
We are changing the millage rate, or is it just because we had it as a solid waste fee separate from the?
Right. Yeah. That's not a millage change. Yeah. Okay. That's not a millage change. Right. I mean, while the fee is based on millage, it is not a millage rate. Yeah, and that's another reason why I'm certainly all for changing that fee structure to ease some of that confusion. For example, even the county, for some reason, when they list municipal tax rates, for some reason they include our solid waste fee in addition to our actual general fund tax millage. So, whereas the state does not. So anyway, sorry, that's my information here for tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions, and otherwise welcome direction from council as to which of these requests should be in the budget, which one shouldn't. And also I'm thankful to Bill for joining us here tonight in case council has any questions for the Narberth Fire Company.
I have a question, Fred.
Sure, go ahead, Bob.
Samantha, it's regarding the trash fees. There's dozens, I'm not sure how many dozens, but probably more than 30 3 to 5 family small apartment buildings, or I guess it's unclear to me what the rate would be for the trash in those type of buildings.
So it would be $376.91 for the year for each. Well, it depends on how the county has the property classified. If the county has the property like that, considered multiple living units, then it'd be however many living units are in that property times that rate of $376.91.
Mm-hmm. So they'd basically be charged at the same rate as 9 or 10 apartments. If it's a three family, they'd be paying the same rate as 10 apartments in an apartment building. In other words, they'd be paying the same rate as a 10-unit apartment building.
That's correct. And again, council wants to adjust that apartment rate. I mean, I certainly could, and that wouldn't be very hard to adjust these numbers accordingly.
I'd just like to propose that in light of the idea that we want to encourage, and that we've encouraged in our zoning, the opportunity for people to create multiple families for the efficiencies, because it's green, for a variety of social, political, and environmental reasons, we've encouraged that kind of adaptive reuse of single-family homes. And in fact, it has a historical basis in the borough. They've always been here. There used to be maybe even more than there are now. That we need not penalize the thing that we've actually incentivized by charging more. For example, there are many 3-family apartment buildings that maybe only have 2 trash cans, not 10 trash cans. It just seems disproportionate to me.
Well, again, I guess if I may, sorry. Again, the point I agree with all that. Again, just the challenge that I face in doing these numbers is that's not how the public bills us, and that's not how the county and the tax bill system necessarily work. So again, I'm very open in 2024 to adjusting our whatever trash contract we come up with to factor all that in, and to actually figure out what maybe a more appropriate billing system might be after the 2023. Or at least that the other option council has is you probably could raise that apartment number and bring down the residential number.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I think we're not talking about the people who live in each of those units is getting some kind of bill for their trash removal. Because isn't it going to the owner of the property?
Yes.
Right now. And it's still going to go to the owner of the property, correct?
That is true.
So it will show up in your rent because everything that the property owner has to, whatever, they have their insurance on the property, whatever, that shows up in your rent. But I guess the thing that it already does. It already does. So this is not a change, really. And that's what I'm wondering. So right now, under our structure of using millage to collect this fee, is it right now close to somewhere in the range of the 376? And so if it is,
average,
and if it is, and we're not in a position right now to change to a system that says, let's look at how much trash you actually generate and charge you based on that, then I don't see why we would make a change for this 1-year period that, I don't see why our method should generate something different than what we would have if we didn't change from millage. Wait until we have our new contract and then do something that is more directly reflected, because we don't have enough data right now to even know how should we adjust any of this. And so it feels to me like we could be setting up something for next year that is different from what we have right now, and then may even be different again from 2024. And I guess I'm wondering, why would we want to do that? Especially if for most people the people that own a property, they're going to see something that looks similar to what they've been paying. I don't know. That's my thought.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So
What you're saying basically is these are not individual fees being tacked on to the tax bill. This is just a breakdown of the millage rate.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, right now.
Is that correct? Is that correct, Samantha? This is just a breakdown of the millage rate. These aren't additional fees being tacked on.
Yeah, so what would happen, right now people are charged 2.1 mils for trash in the borough. Instead of being charged 2.1 mils, you would instead be billed a flat rate fee based upon these numbers here on this
Okay.
slide.
So yes, Barbara, this is an enormous change. It's not the same. This is not a reflection of the millage rate. These are additional fees.
It would be so.
It's.
Yeah. Okay. So there will be the current fee of 2.1 mils will go away, right? So that's
exactly.
We're going to take that away this year. Instead, we're going to be charging individually based on the calculations that we have from Republic.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is for all of our neighbors who have 3-family buildings or even 2-family buildings, they're going to be paying the same rate as a 10-unit apartment building if they have a 3-unit apartment, and if they have a 2-unit, they're paying the same rate as a 7-unit apartment building. And so I agree with Samantha that we should probably look at increasing the apartment residential rate, the apartment residential fee, and decreasing the residential property unit, or offering small apartment buildings, say that have 3 to 5 residential units, the same rate as the residential apartment buildings.
Right. So I'm going to propose that I think what you're describing is listed by the county as multifamily housing, MFH, on the description, right?
Exactly.
And you look into, Samantha, what would be the repercussions if we charged multifamily housing the same as apartments for this year?
Yeah, and this is an item that council doesn't necessarily, this is like one of the few things that the budget council doesn't necessarily have to decide tonight. Really the general fund is like the thing that, because the solid waste fund, its own thing, you know, like it'll be, this decision if something needs to change with that, it won't be a disaster.
Right. So I'm going to propose that Samantha look into this offline, and then, you know, we can take this up again later. If that's all right.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's talk about other questions or line items in the budget that we need to discuss. Rob.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, Samantha, with the green fund, it will be established. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we have the slide budget request for the green fund. Mm-hmm. We have an addition for the carbon offsets that we've discussed. Mm-hmm. And then we have these expenses that will be charged. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious, like, so how is the green fund going to be funded to pay for these expenses?
Yeah, so as shown on here, one of the revenue sources would be the carbon offset funds from the borough purchases. Grants would be a part of the funding for it. So I just include the net charge for the EV chargers. We have grant funding if we move forward with that from PICO and DEP for that. And then the remainder of the funding needed for the green fund, at least for next year, would come from the general fund.
Oh, okay. That was what I needed. Okay.
Didn't we once upon a time talk about something like when we reach the payoff point for, say, the LED street lighting, when we reach the point where they're net, like have reduced actually what we would have paid in electricity? We were talking about the possibility. I know that's a future thing of converting that into a green fund.
Sorry, well, I wasn't here when council made that. But I would say that the borough, if that was the case, the borough has already reached that point. And actually, I mean, I'd have to look at the numbers, but off the top of my head, the give or take $60,000 that I'm proposing the general fund give to the green fund, I think sounds kind of similar to what we ended up saving on the LED street lights.
Okay, great.
Because those kinds of there's something nice about being able to say this is the money that we saved with green measures. We're going to use that. We're going to roll it into more green measures and show how it can actually be, pay for itself and be cost effective.
Yeah, that's great.
Anyway, if that's what we're doing at Lake Austin, I think it'd be good if the budget called out that.
Yeah, I agree.
I like that very much. I had forgotten about that. So the other thing was, we had this discussion in infrastructure about the boiler and the carbon offset as an annual component of the carbon offset, but we haven't decided on that yet.
That's right.
But that could kick into this fund if we did decide.
If we did replace, exactly, yeah. If we did replace the boiler and decide to collect that fee, that would, of course, go into the green fund as well, yeah.
Okay.
And the great thing about, the green fund, as we've talked about, just to emphasize for council and the public, is that, if you get additional revenue like that, you'll be able to hold on to it and make strategic decisions with it instead of being like, oh, our funding's going to expire at the end of the year, how can we use it kind of thing.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I know we talked at one point about one of the EV chargers that maybe it wasn't a suitable location for it? Has that already been removed from the budget, or what's the status there?
No, so this request does include all 6 of them. I mean, that's up to council, but again, if we feel we need to cut anything else in the budget, that's certainly something that we could. And I did get Flo, the provider, to give me a cost for just what this one charger would be to, if council did decide to remove that from the budget. One of the things we had talked about with that particular charger, it's the one I proposed over near Iona and Woodbine, was the parking in that area, and I had some concerns about potentially limiting 2 parking spots in that area to EV only, given I've been out that area a number of times, all during the day mostly, but the parking there seems pretty full all the time. So what we had talked about in both the parking committee and PHS, and I forget if this made its way to council, was in terms of trying to work with private property owners for access to parking lots, and given that lot that Insigniam has is right there, that seems to always be empty. I was hoping to try and work something out with that. I don't have a definitive answer on that yet. The other option is council, and I talked with Flo about this. The other option is council could certainly say, like, well, let's do the other 5 and then maybe circle back on this 6th one pending, if we can make any headway with Insigniam on the use of their parking lot for the public. But that's a council decision, not a Samantha decision.
That seems like a reasonable approach.
Yeah.
So in terms of budget, that would be budgeting for.
She's finding out.
No, I have the number already. It would save us. It would save us about 10,000.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we agreed in the committee that we couldn't really accommodate it unless
we got the. Okay. So, but we would probably leave it in the budget then, in case we were able to arrange the parking lot, or would it be?
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, unless you feel like if you feel like you need to cut something, that's an opportunity as well.
Okay. We'll keep that in mind. All right, so we've got Bill Henderson here, so I think we ought to talk about the fire department's request. Do you have it on a slide?
Yeah, I'll pull that up here. That's capital fund. And I do want to say I certainly, I wouldn't have put it on the slide otherwise, I certainly support their request.
There it is.
So if I may first, then feel free to jump in here. My understanding, speaking with Bill, is this is specific equipment that the fire department needs to do their I think I have a typo maybe on the turnout gear, but specific gear the fire department needs to safely do their job, and the turnout gear and the carbon monoxide detectors, my understanding, are expired and can't be used by the department anymore, and so have to be replaced. I had some really good dialogue with Bill and with Fran Dixon about the financial challenges and situations that the fire company deals with, and so so again, I would support the request for those specific items, and otherwise I'd welcome any thoughts from Bill about it as well.
And honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg of some of the things that we need. We've got other, the turnout gear, National Fire Protection Association only allows you to use it for 10 years from manufacture date. So even if somebody like me, if I got injured and my gear was 11 years old, there's a lot of repercussions that could come down on a lot of people. So we are very aware of that, and we're trying to, as people's gear starts to become close to out of date, we are getting them in new gear so that we're not putting anybody, including ourselves, in that position. I mean,
And if I may on that, I have to give the fire company credit. They're not just coming hat in hand to the borough on that. Bill, you applied, what, 2 weeks ago for a grant to pay for some of the turnout gear as well?
At least to cover at least 2 sets of it. So hopefully we get that money. Everybody in the state's going for it, so it's at least. But we've been successful most years for getting in the neighborhood $13,000 to $15,000 of grant money, which we have used for turnout gear. We did not get. We had an issue last year with dealing with the state. I'm not going to get into that, but we did not get it last year. But that's probably the first time in 10 years that I've been doing the grants, 10 plus years that I've been doing the grants, that we did not get at least $12,000. So. We are trying. There's other grants we tried for. When we purchased the air packs, the self-contained breathing apparatus. Excuse me. We went in on a federal grant with Lower Merion and got the majority of our. I believe it was close to $300,000 purchase funded by the federal government. I think we paid 5% of that. So I mean, we are looking at other places, and but there's a lot of expenses. This, like I said, this is the tip of the iceberg. Sadly, I mean, it's for safety, and I understand that. As things, a lot of places, it's just like car warranties. It's like you run out of the warranty, you run out of the year, and you run the risk of somebody getting hurt. And after what we experienced last summer with losing a firefighter in Penn, where we were at the call. And some of our firefighters were in that area when it happened. It's not a pleasant experience, and I don't ever want to go through that again. I mean, I'm not trying to beat Debbie Downer, but it's one of those things that we have to be cognizant of and stay on top of it, because I don't want to lose somebody ever again, and I certainly don't want it to be because of my negligence or. Just not doing things right.
So you would propose some reductions. Could you just summarize that again? I'm sorry.
Sure. So the reductions I proposed, the fire company had originally asked for $75,000, and I suggested that we reduce that request down to $53,068, which would be an amount to pay for thermal imaging units, 4 sets of the structural firefighting turnout gear, with, as Bill mentioned, 2 sets pending the grant they applied for, and then 6 sets of personal carbon monoxide detectors. And then to be fair to the fire department, I didn't think it would be fair for any one entity to take the brunt of any budget cuts. There were some additional suggestions provided here for council that affect administration, public works, and the police department.
So I have a question, and just looking at those items, are any of those non-recurring, or are those all, like every year we're going to need 6 more sets of turnout gear or whatever? I just like, is that
it's a recurring cost, because we try to stagger the purchases so that we're not getting stuck with buying 35 sets at once.
Same thing with the thermal imaging units? Thermal
imaging units are, the ones we have right now are going on like 7 or 8 years old, and the problem is they don't make replacement parts anymore.
Yeah.
So as they start to fail, as the batteries start to fail, as the internal workings, we can't get them fixed.
Well, and so I guess my question is, so does that, would next year, would you need to purchase the same number?
Thermal imaging, no. We hope that we're going to get, that's more of a small capital expense, the way we look at that. Mm-hmm. I mean, even the turnout gear is a small capital expense. We're hoping it's going to last 10 years, unless it gets damaged. The personal carbon monoxide meters or detectors are something that our chief officers wear when we might respond to a scene directly. So like if I get there at 3 o'clock in the morning and walk into somebody's house, get halfway across the living room to check on an odor or something like that, if that goes off, it tells me to get out so that I can go get my air pack on and stuff like that. Those are only good for 2 years, but the ones that are longer term, don't last longer term and they're more money. So, I mean, these are very reliable, they're good for 2 years, and then they need to be replaced.
I guess the reason I'm asking that question is I'm wondering, does it make sense to recategorize the thermal imaging units as a non-recurring expense that we'd be willing to fund through the fund balance? Yes, thank you. I was like, what's the term? What are you using? Excuse me. And that the other parts would then be recurring that we would want to.
Well, how are they categorized now? I guess?
Yeah.
So right now I categorize, and this is sorry I didn't ask Bill this question myself, I actually categorize it all as recurring.
Okay.
I would expect that even if this is not the particular piece of equipment that needs to replace next year, other things will need to be replaced.
That's what I said. It's steady. We're going to be replacing. We're also going to be replacing some of our hose next year. This was just a snapshot of some of the big items that we need.
So there will be recurrent costs year upon year that we can expect, even if we don't know exactly what they are.
Okay, well, that's fair.
Yeah.
I would say.
Trying to figure out.
I think that was my rationale for why I categorized it that way.
Makes sense. So I guess the question then is, and I can't answer the question. Is it reasonable to reduce the request? I mean, is that,
Well, part of the request is for general financial support,
right.
And not for a specific item. Mm-hmm. And there's an assumption in there that they will receive grant funding for the rest of the turnout gear that they need.
Well, I want to be fair to the fire company. I don't think that was an invalid request. It just was faced with the challenges of getting the structural deficit reduced. Mm-hmm. That's why I had to just focus on the specific requests they had. Mm-hmm. And
it's not the first time where we've had a general category of item that the borough manager has looked at and said, aha, we're going to reduce that. I know the green fund has, in prior years, prior borough managers have looked at that and said, oh, unallocated funds. Yeah, that's, that has to go. So I think it's just a way that,
I mean, I could give you a list of 15, 20 other things that we're going to be doing next year that are equipment or maintenance related, and if you need it.
I mean, I think that the logic of the cut is that we're cutting requests from different departments. Everybody's getting a cut of something.
I didn't question that. I just you kind of see that it was just
I'm not saying it's
a general fund. We have a lot of other irons in the fire that we are constantly working on.
It was an observation.
Hose that needs to be replaced.
It wasn't meant to be a criticism.
No, not at all. And my question is more just do I know enough to know? Yeah.
I'm always available.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Bill.
All right, thanks. Not seeing any other questions for you.
Two questions.
Barbara, go ahead.
Okay, so I have two questions. One, the line item in the general fund where we have master park plan is I know we've committed to some money because of grants that we're applying for. So is that what the 16,000?
No, that's a higher amount. So to clarify for council, we had originally committed to $4,000, and then I asked Bill Collins his opinion about it, and what he suggested to me was that if we bump it up to that $16,000 number, we're hedging our bet in case we don't get the GCNR grant. He told me that if we only got the PICO grant and the borough committed $16,000, then that would be enough money to do kind of a minimal sort of master park plan to get us what we need to move forward with any future grant applications and that kind of thing. Whereas the sort of master park plan that I think the borough really wants to do, from what I've heard from council and the Parks and Rec Board, is more something that would require funding from both the DCNR and PICO grant plus that 4,000. So if we got the DCNR and the PICO, we would still only be doing 4,000. If we only get the PICO, I would want to do 16,000. If we get neither, then we're going to kind of have to go back to the drawing board a little bit on that one.
Yeah. All right. Got it. Okay. And then the other question I had was just, I just wanted to know a little more about the Windsor Avenue bench request in the Green Fund, just to know what it is that we'd be, what that program is.
So I received a suggestion that to improve walkability in the borough, that there be some additional benches around the Windsor Ave area, and I believe in particular as you get closer to the park area, for people who may, even for people who are ambulatory, to be able, to walk more than a block at a time or something like that. And so that'll be the intention of that.
Because I think that's great. I'm just wasn't sure. Because if I think of the big stretches of Windsor Avenue, there is no place to put a bench. The sidewalks are already really narrow. You can't put another bench on there. So to me, the only place I can think of where it would be would either if you're putting another one on the post office property at the bus stop or down along the park, so in front of the library or the park. So I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, I think this would be a rare sort of budget thing where we would be approving funding to meet a demonstrated need, but to fill in the specifics, we would have to then work through that in committee.
Yeah, super. Okay.
Well, that's where Cindy has her hand raised.
Cindy, thank you so much.
Sorry, keeping with the theme of park questions, did we ever discern whether particularly the non-Narberth adult leagues who use our field, who, if I remember correctly from years ago, are primarily the hitters who really require the netting? Do we know if they pay to use our fields? Just following up, Samantha, on the question that you kind of raised, does that 10,000 netting request from the NAA already include some sort of subsidy from these outside groups?
So yeah, as I said earlier, I do not know the answer to that, and that's part of why I'm recommending council, not consider that request at this time, but come back to it once we have more information about what that entails and who's contributing what towards it.
Okay.
So Cindy,
sure.
So if you remember before a couple of years ago, NAA was supposed to come to FAA.
Oh. Yeah, it was my committee. Yep.
So I think that that's long overdue. So we should set that up again for next year, and that'll be a good opportunity to talk about this request. But it should get us back on track, talking to them, and we can proceed from there. So does that sound good to you?
Yeah, no, that's great. I would actually suggest that would be an easy one that I would probably say to put on hold for this year until that process continues.
Okay. Any other comments about any other questions for Samantha or particular items? All right, so I still am a little uncomfortable with, we take the pulse of council, the idea of hiring 35-hour-a-week employees to avoid, paying benefits.
Oh, no, we would be paying benefits.
Oh, would we?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Oh, 35 hours is sufficient to... Okay.
Yeah, 30 hours is the minimum for benefits.
Never mind.
Yeah, sorry, these would be full-time employees. Yeah, well, they would be mostly full-time employees.
All right.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't clarify that.
The savings would be much bigger if they didn't get benefits.
Yeah.
I was thinking
that's pretty cheap. Salary and benefits.
So it sounds like really the only item that I'm hearing to add to Samantha's list is the netting, right? Pull the netting.
Yeah, so I heard that, do a little more research and on the impact of the solid waste fee proposal In the budget itself, note, in the actual budget document, note the streetlight savings are paying for the general fund contribution to the green fund, and kind of continue to look at what the situation is with that EV charger for Iona and Woodside.
Yeah.
Well, that's the basic direction I needed. I can take that and work on actual budget document and get some answers to some of this stuff for your next meeting.
I'll ask, so when are you going to hear about your grant for the turnout clothing? Is that this year? Or is that
We should hear, I'm going to say December to January. It doesn't always track the same.
If council did want to address that, if the fire company does not get that grant and council wanted to fund that request, even though we can't officially reopen the budget next year, council can certainly make one-off budget adjustments at any time during the year, as we've done many times this year with all the things we've had going on out here.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean,
and I would certainly support that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think also we say that that's a recurring expense, but it might not be a recurring expense depending on whether we get the grant funded part of it. It's sort of depends on whether we get the grant.
Sorry. The portion I'm asking for the borough to contribute does not include the grant funded part at this time.
No, right, but I'm just saying that if we add it back, right, it's not necessarily an add back as a full recurring item because it seems like there's an 80% chance every year we're going to get the grant funding or something like that. So it's not fully a structural deficit because is that a reasonable number? 80% of the time we get some grant funding.
Honestly, it would be 100% except for last year. So last year was an anomaly because of a.
Okay, so call it 90%. Yeah. So then it could really be considered
That's a good point. Yeah, now I'm clear.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess let us know if the grant doesn't come through.
I'll keep it.
That sounds great. Thank you, Bill.
It was accepted. So I mean, our grant application was accepted. So that's a positive.
Okay. Any other discussion on the budget this time? Okay.
Thanks.
So this will be back on our agenda for the next few meetings as usual. 7C is a 450 North Narberth Ave zoning.
All right. So as usual, this is council's opportunity if they take particular umbrage with a zoning hearing application to express that if they want the solicitor to be there. I am not recommending for that. This is it's a use variance. Someone wants to do a natural wellness service sort of business in an office building. Obviously, I'll be for the zoning hearing board to decide, but for what it's worth, I don't think it's something that's worth sending the borough solicitor in opposition to or in support of either.
Can we get the Zoom back on screen so we can?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
It's okay. All right. Does anybody have any objection to the change of use? Okay. So I think council has no position on that. Let's move on to action items. Surprising number.
Okay. I move that Borough Council approve and advertise job description for Chief of Police, Director of Public Safety, consideration of advertising.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Who wants to lead some discussion here?
Maybe I'll start and then depending on how Cindy's certainly welcome to follow up after me or whoever else on council. So this document is a result of direction from Borough Council as well as some suggestions from Nicole Beckett at the Minor Center that council publicly voted that we were going to work with a few months back on filling our Chief of Police position. I think the goals of this position, just so the public understands, is to, modernize the position for the needs of the public and the police department going forward, hence the sort of dual role title here. And so, I certainly, recommend in favor of council approving this. And I'm really grateful to all of the input and support, that I've heard from both Cindy and the input and the constructive support from the mayor on this as well. So thank you both. And if any of the two of you have anything to add, to council's benefit, I certainly would welcome that.
Yeah, not on my end. You summarized that well. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, council. I look forward to advertising this.
Yeah, I look forward to getting it out and getting the process started and seeing if we can get someone in this role, which is really super important to the borough.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Andrea. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's vote on approving and advertising this job description for the Chief of Police, Director of Public Safety. All those in favor of approving and advertising?
Aye.
Okay, see no one opposed, it's unanimous. 8B, saldo.
I move the Borough Council approve advertisement of the saldo update ordinance.
Second, okay. I know that there have been some changes made since last time we looked at this.
Yeah, so just to recap for the benefit of council and the public, we've talked a number of times about this. Todd Brussie from the Planning Commission has come to council a number of times over the past year seeking feedback from council on this. Again, just so everyone's on the same page and future recording watchers, saldo is subdivision and land development ordinance. When someone applies for new construction in the borough, this is the process they have to follow, and to get that, to get their building considered and potentially approved. The biggest changes, keep in mind, I have not been intimately involved in the development of this. I give a lot of credit to the borough solicitor, our planning consultant from Montgomery County Planning Commission, my assistant, Michelle Carroll, as well as the borough's other professional staff, our engineer, Eric Johnson, code and zoning officer, Kevin Walsh. So my understanding is this saldo, one of the biggest changes is we would no longer require council to consider tentative sketch plans. The MPC actually doesn't require that, and the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code doesn't require that, and frankly it's put council in an awkward position at times where council hears a tentative plan and says this sounds great, and then something happens between tentative and final, and then council's like, well, no, this doesn't work anymore, and then the applicant's like, well, you said it was good at tentative. So council just really doesn't have enough information at the tentative sketch plan process to make a decision on approving or not, which I think is why the state planning code doesn't require council to do that. Council would still have to approve or deny preliminary plans as well as final plan applications. There have been a number of changes to make the saldo more consistent with our zoning code. There were a number of definitions that appeared in both or appeared in one and not the other that were clarified and straightened out. Let's see, I'm trying to remember from Todd's previous presentations. The changes that occurred to this document between when Todd Brussie, our Planning Commission chair, presented to council and this version are mostly technical. There are things the borough solicitor had to work out with our planning consultant, again, mostly to ensure consistency between the saldo and the zoning ordinance. And, sorry, I should have brought water with me. I do want to emphasize that this decision tonight just starts the process for council to approve it. So what would happen after tonight? Legally, our planning commission then has to render a recommendation on it, and the county planning commission has to render a recommendation on it. And as we found out with past ordinances, that does, just because they've been involved in drafting it, doesn't mean that either of those bodies won't come back to us with further input on them. After we get that legally required input, then council would again discuss the ordinance before it would be approved. And at that meeting, we certainly would have the solicitor and our planning commission chair and all those folks for council as well.
Weren't there some significant enhancements to the stormwater requirements?
There were, and that was, yeah, so this Saldo incorporates, yes, a month and a half ago, council approved a new stormwater ordinance per requirements from the state, and this ordinance does incorporate those as well. In particular, use of green stormwater infrastructure.
Any other questions or comments about Saldo? Yeah, do you need to get some water? Yeah. Go ahead. All right, let's vote on advertising the Saldo update. All those in favor of advertising Saldo? It's unanimous. 8C, homestead exemption.
I move that Borough Council approve advertisement of $20,500 homestead exemption ordinance.
Is there a second? Thank you, Ira. So, Samantha, do you want me to explain it?
Actually, if my voice could get a break, that would be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
So this is
Actually, I'm in water. I'll be right back.
All right. This is a tax exemption for homeowners in the borough. If you own a property and live on that property, you're eligible for a homestead exemption. Most of the people who qualify for this already have signed up for a homestead exemption from the school district. Right. So Lower Merion School District offers a homestead exemption. So this would be a borough homestead exemption, and it's $20,500 because that results in $201, I think, $201 of tax relief. So everybody who owns a home and lives in that home in the borough is eligible for this. This is being paid for via the earned income tax. Hopefully that's a clear enough summary. And what's the path forward? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have a quick question. If you already get the homestead exemption from the school district, do you have to reapply for the other one?
You do not. They will check and they will sign up everybody who's got the school district exemption. And if you don't, you should sign up for the school district exemption.
Yes, really, yeah.
You should be getting them both.
How can people check to find out if they look?
We have a list. So I don't know, are we going to send that?
So the school district is actually legally required to send people a notice each year who are eligible for the homestead exemption who haven't claimed it.
Okay. So people should know about it.
If you're paying attention to your mail, you will know.
Any other questions or comments about this? All right, let's vote to advertise the $20,000 500 homestead exemption. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. 8D.
So actually, before anyone makes a motion on that, if I may, a point of order. Sorry, reading Robert's Rules of Order lately. I would actually like, I can't make a motion, but I would like to strongly encourage someone on council to make a motion to table this item. The borough engineer contacted me earlier today to inform me that the contractor does not agree with this final payment, and we're still working that out. So council should not consider this at this time.
I move to table.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion about tabling this? All right, we're voting to table 8D, consideration of a change order, final payment for Hamilton contractors. All those in favor of tabling? Any opposed? Okay, motion is tabled. 8E, revision to code policy. Can I hear a motion?
Who's supposed to make that?
That's Rob.
Go ahead.
I move the Borough Council approve revision to COVID policy for masking in public meetings and suspension of unvaccinated employee COVID testing.
I'll second.
Okay, and this is, there's two changes we're considering. One is to, right now our policy is to require masking in public meetings if the county is in moderate transmission. This would change that to if the county is in high transmission only, to require masking in public meetings. And this would also suspend our policy where unvaccinated employees need to take COVID tests.
On the second part, if I could contribute a couple of things. I do want to emphasize that word suspend. This is not end, it is suspend. And certainly Borough Council would reserve the right, to, even if we were to kind of, council still have the right to bring it back whenever you'd like. The reason at this time that I've proposed this to the mayor and council president is looking at our staffing and the success of the program today, the number of vaccinated employees. That when we started this program, the borough's confirmed vaccination numbers were well below that of the county as a whole. I'm now pleased to say that borough employee vaccination numbers are now in line with Montgomery County as a whole. In addition, well, that's the main reason. I don't want to get any personal details about any employees or anything like that.
Okay. Any discussion of this change? Barbara?
I guess the only thing I would say is still, if people want to wear masks, they can wear masks. And there will be times that I'm sure that I'm at one of these meetings when other people aren't, and I may be because I may feel like I should be. So I think that this is one of those things where we're allowing more flexibility.
Yeah, and we've continued to get comments that I think initially we thought might not be in good faith about being able to hear us speaking while we're on a Zoom meeting in particular with masks. And I think we've heard enough of those comments that I think we can assume that they were in good faith and it's a problem. So
yes, but I also think it's there may be times when an individual feels, no, I need to wear a mask, and
certainly, and we know this is not to prohibit anyone.
Exactly.
In fact, I think we should continue to provide Samantha masks at the
absolutely.
Yeah.
So we do still have them if anybody needs them in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'll make sure they're more, maybe a little more prominent location at future meetings.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Okay. We're going to vote on revising the COVID policy for masking in public meetings and suspending COVID testing for unvaccinated employees. All those in favor of this change? Opposed? Okay. All right. Let's move to committee reports. Infrastructure.
Right. So the main topic we discussed in our last meeting was the options for the boiler replacement in this building. Carolyn Fowler, I believe is her name, presented from Panoni. She presented 4 options. One is an in-kind replacement with a natural gas boiler that's similar to the one we have. One was a high-efficiency natural gas boiler. One was a new electric boiler. One was a new electric heat pump boiler, which isn't actually available at this time. And then the final one is to wait for the electric heat pump boiler to become feasible, and in the meantime check on the feasibility of how hard it would be to service our current boiler should it become inoperable. And Samantha is investigating that. Manager Brian is investigating that right now, so we haven't heard back. The issue with the other electric option is it has very high operational costs. And so it's not necessarily the greatest choice. And if we went with either of the natural gas solutions, we would be paying annual carbon offsets. So we'll be back with you again once we have a little bit more information. Both of the electric options require upgrading the electric service of this building, but that's planned in any case. And so it's part of a plan for this building. Finally, the bridge is still on schedule, and the town square final presentation is in December.
Okay. Thank you, Ira. Finance administration.
Hi, folks. We canceled our meeting because Samantha was reviewing the budget with us as a full council, so nothing new to report. Other than a thank you to Samantha and John Walco for sponsoring and coordinating a volunteer appreciation event where everyone who was on any board or commission was invited to come celebrate with La Petite Matron goodies and learn more about expectations of their role and sunshine laws, etc. So thank you both to Samantha and John.
Yeah, we had a great turnout for that.
Yeah.
Public health and safety.
Yeah, we actually meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. And so I'll have more to report next time, but the PAC has been meeting. It had a meeting, I believe it was last week, or
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and then we are also grateful for the MOU that council agreed to for the CCA, and I know that that's already having an impact on thinking in other boroughs. So it's, yeah, the little engine that could. Yeah.
And parking.
I'm not going to say anything other than that our next meeting is November 15th at 8 a.m. It's a week from Tuesday.
Okay. Announcements for the good of council. All right, we will have an executive session after this to discuss a personnel matter relating to the terms of employment of a borough employee and another personnel matter relating to the potential hiring of a borough employee. Do we have anything else right now?
Let's see here. No, those are only two personnel matters off the top of my head I can think of.
Okay, and I don't think we're going to come back. All right, we will not resume after the executive session. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, is there a second? And all those in favor of adjourning? All right, this meeting is adjourned. We'll move on to executive session.
Good night, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, I'm going to say goodnight and tap out, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Hope you feel better.
Yeah, really.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stop the recording.
Don't say guys.